Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session, we are going over what the tanks specifically need to work on, need to focus on, what they need to be thinking about when they are playing in the modern ball comp or ball zen comp there. And you can see the most standard version of this comp is what I have up on the board right now, where you're going to have Ball Tracer, Sombra, Zen, Diva, Brig, something along those lines. You might sub out your Sombra, you might sub out your Diva for a Sigma, that sort of thing. But this is really the comp that we're talking about. And while, we're emphasizing ball a lot here, we're absolutely also going to go over how to play the Diva and how to play the Sigma. We're just starting on ball because ball is the full-time tank in this comp. So when you're playing ball, what you really want to focus on in this way of playing the comp, or in this comp, is you do need to initially make sure that you are taking your lanes and you are forcing back any sort of flankers. If you want a more general overview for how this comp works, I have linked the matchup guide to this comp in the description below. But what you're looking to do as Wrecking Ball is go, hey, I'm here, I'm going to go take a lane. So we've set up our core here. This could be the left lane from our perspective. This could be the right lane. Don't need to take middle, want to take left or right lane. So could end up in one lane with your Tracer, in the other lane with your Sombra. It would be unusual for you to end up in a situation where you're alone in a lane, but it will sometimes happen, especially if, you're maybe resetting between fights, or not quite resetting between fights, but someone's traded out, that sort of thing. So usually you're looking to get lane control, and if they're on their own, dive comp, ball comp, whatever the case may be, you want to force back, you want to look to win duels against these flankers. This is very common against Monkey Ana comps, where you're going, hey, let's drive back their Tracer, drive back their Echo. This is very common in mirrors. This can happen against six-man comps. Those would be the Monkey Moira comps, where you might run into a Tracer or a Sombra. Little less likely. Obviously, you won't always find Sombras there. So what you really want to do is drive back their flankers, and you want to use your mobility to help your teammates win their lane. It is much easier in most maps, in most situations, for Ball to rapidly swap lanes and go help out his Sombra or go help out his Tracer than it is for Tracer to go across lanes and help out Sombra, that sort of thing. So you want to use that extreme mobility, force back, help win those duels. That's sort of the bread and butter of how this comp operates anyways. It donates resources to the flankers to help them win lane battles there. What you're then going to do is you're going to disrupt if necessary. So maybe you need to disrupt their backline a little bit, or their poke aspects a little bit, to help your backline rotate. Maybe you're just trying to create an opening where, hey, you drove their Tracer back, but you're still not ready to dive them. So you go, hey, I'm going to go ahead and hit a quick roll through, or hit a quick roll through and pile drive, and my Tracer's going to blank in, and we're going to try to get a pick, and then we're both going to leave, sort of thing. We're not ready for our actual dive, where maybe our Sombra would go into, and our backline would start walking in. Maybe it's not one of those. Maybe it's just we're trying to soften them up. That's absolutely something that you'd look to do a lot when you're playing against a brawl comp. So if you're playing against a heavier comp, maybe something that has a Reinhardt, has a Mei, a Cassidy, a Bap, that sort of thing, it would be very common to go, hey, let's hit a roll through, or let's maybe do a gentle pile drive, let our Tracer go in, maybe do a gentle pile drive, let our Sombra try to do some work. But this isn't the real commit where a backline is walking in yet, because this team is stronger than us. So you're going to force back any sort of flankers they have, and you could mix a Tracer into a brawl comp as well, where you'd still force back their Tracer first. You'd still try to win those duels as best you can there. You do that, you switch lanes to help your flankers win their duels. If you can get an elimination, great, you've won. If you can't get an elimination, you may have to soften them up in some way. Other things that you can run into, another thing that would be similar to a brawl comp but isn't actually a brawl comp, would be a six-man comp. This would be a Winston Moira comp, and what you're generally going to look for with this comp as Wrecking Ball is you look at this and go, instead of playing far to the side to win the lanes, you're actually frequently going to heavily emphasize the need to break their one-directional dive. Yes, they could put a Sombra, a Tracer behind you. They probably will put a Sombra on an angle. But the main thing that you're interested in is breaking this comp's dive to give your team just a little bit more time to establish poke and do work with the rest of their team. This team is very likely to press W on you or to try to use their movement abilities and press W on you. Breaking that dive with Wrecking Ball with a clean roll through of your own team and then theirs, that sort of thing, not setting up with your angle. It's a little unusual for Wrecking Ball, but it works wonders against breaking the sort of engage that you'll look at from a 6-man comp, a talent dive comp, that sort of thing. You don't want to do this against the Monkey Anna comps. Against the Monkey Anna comps, you do want to play your more standard way of playing on the lanes and winning those duels for the lanes there. It really is actually important. Remember, when your actual dive comes into play, it does need to come from 3+ directions. There's not a situation where you go, hey, if we're actually diving rather than just disrupting a dive, we all go in from one direction. You as Ball need to make sure that you are on one of those directions that isn't your core. That is, of course, important. Make sure, easiest way to make that happen is when you're doing your roll throughs, if you're softening up a team, that you still make sure you leave in a direction that isn't the direction of your core. It's very rare that you want to retreat after doing a hit back towards your core to try to go get healing or anything like that. The way you expect to sustain in this comp as Wrecking Ball is off of health packs. Yeah, you might get some inspired healing when you are in. Yes, you will get some Harmony Orb. Harmony Orb is perfectly reasonable to go on you. The occasional health pack is perfectly able to go on you, but don't at all hesitate to get your health packs as Ball here. Okay. When you actually go in here, we do want to recognize that whatever we're playing against, we're looking to quickly take out. This is a dive comp, even though, we're maybe going to walk in our backline and brawl a bit. This is a dive comp. We do need to quickly take out 2 squishies. And as Wrecking Ball, it's very likely that you are responsible for the target calling here. So you're going to call out the Zen, the Brig, the Hanzo, the Cassidy. You're not going to call out the Orisa or the Diva or the Torbjorn or the Mei, someone like that. You're going to try to take out 1 to 2 squishy targets very quickly when you actually commit in for that dive there. When you call that, it is likely that you will be the target caller. And then lastly, you do want to keep in mind that your minefield is generally something that you want to make sure is being used early in fights. So if you're planning to use multiple ults in a fight, minefield should really be sort of the first thing on the board. Whatever the opponents have. The opponents have Rally. The opponents have Transcendence. You have Rally. You have Transcendence. You have EMP. They have EMP. Whatever the case is, minefield is generally sort of the first thing that you want to see come into play. You can drop a minefield. That forces Trans. That is a fantastic play. You drop minefield. They don't use anything. That's fantastic. You drop minefield, they pop Rally. That's perfectly fine. We can now hit the later Rally, the later Transcendence, that sort of thing. Minefield is generally something that you want used early in the cycle of ults that you have for your team. Because if you think about what the Ball comp has for its ults, you are, of course, looking at your standards are going to be, hey, we've got minefield, we've got Transcendence, we've got Rally, and we've got EMP, and those are all very powerful brawl ults. But minefield is the weakest of those, and minefield is the one that you would happily use to force the opponents to pop theirs. So you use minefield, they pop their own Transcendence or Rally. You use minefield, they pop their EMP. You use minefield, they pop their beat. Those are good trades. We're happy to get that, and then we get to answer with our own, and we're more powerful. Ours came in a bit later there. Okay, last thing I am going to mention is after you've won the fight, you're generally not going to just hang around waiting for your Brig, your Zen to heal you back up. What's generally going to happen is the Harmony Orb is going to have to, after the fight is over, go over to the Diva to get her healed back up. You much more easily than the Diva can go get those Megas, and you do not want to wait for it to cycle back to you, that Harmony Orb. You want to go get Megas and go set up ahead for the next fight there. Go get control of lanes ahead in the next fight so you are in a good spot to go ahead and win there. Obviously, after they've healed up Diva, they'll cycle the Harmony Orb back to you, back to Tracer, potentially back to Sombra, usually to you or Tracer, and hey, if you've got that, you can play a little bit more to hard win your lanes. Cool. So next we move on to our next tank, and the tank that you're going to see most often in the off-tank slot is D.Va. D.Va is a great tank for this. It was sort of, when this comp first started getting played a lot, it used Sigma. When it first started getting played a lot, it usually had a poke DPS with it. Now it more frequently has Sombra plus D.Va. And D.Va is definitely the more flexible of the two tanks that can go in this slot, but let's go over how she works. So what she's looking to do is help her core rotate. She's got that DM to help her core rotate, to help them get across some chokes, to eventually help her core walk in. She's got verticality. We like these things. Sometimes what she's going to end up doing is she's going to have to plug an abandoned lane on a little bit of a shallow way. So as we can see here, we've got what are effectively 3 different lanes. I'll just draw those real quick. It should be obvious, but we've got what are effectively 3 different lanes here. And what may happen is, let's pretend that our Sombra got forced out. Our Sombra got forced out and is now back at Mega. Well, we don't want a situation where our Brig Zen are super vulnerable to this lane now. We don't want these people to just show up on them, this Sombra and Ball in this situation, while our Sombra is out. Before, when we had our Sombra here, there was no good paths for the opponents to challenge us. If they went through the center, they got pinched on by our flankers from 2 different sides, plus us shooting at them. If they tried to go through the top lane, well, our flankers are in the way. We can counter-rotate our backline in such a way that we can go, hey, let's counter-rotate a little, let's counter-rotate a little, let's counter-rotate a little. Great, that works. So that's generally how that would work, but let's say our Sombra got forced back, as we did in this example. What are we now going to do to not be vulnerable? Well, that's not too bad. We just adjust our D.Va a little bit shallow into the lane. So we're a little bit more vulnerable to a direct approach now, because we don't have our D.Va paying quite as much forward attention to maybe their backline, to maybe their Winston that's going to jump in, to maybe their Briggs and D.Va that are going to walk on us, to maybe their, whatever the case may be there. Maybe you're playing against a Brawl team that does a Tracer, but we don't know where the Tracer is. Whatever the case may be there, you're generally going to move your D.Va to help plug up this off lane, but only shallowly. You'll notice our Ball Tracer, we can set much deeper in the lane. It doesn't hugely matter to us. Our D.Va is very rarely going to go super deep in a lane to control it the way that Sombra might, the way that Tracer or Ball would. She's going to play as if she were losing the lane, but hasn't totally given it up. An example similar would be, hey, Sombra's fighting for this lane. She's starting to lose, so she plays her lane shallowly, where she can get more easy support from her Zen, from her Brig packs, crossfire from the D.Va, that sort of thing. You sort of play a lane more shallowly rather than give up. If you have to give up a lane, D.Va can substitute in a shallow way where she has that easy Brig support, that easy Zen support to protect a lane, to make it so that there's not an easy dive onto her backline. That's something that she would look to do. Another thing that's going to be very important for D.Va is she wants to break up engagements. One of the ways that D.Va is better than Sigma is that when engagements come on her team, when engagements get, hey, we're going to just run at the other team. A good example of this would especially be 6-Man. She is very good at going, let me boost through you. Let me boost through your monkey, and then you turn right back and protect my team as they're coming in. Or a Brawl's coming at her. Okay, let's go ahead and hit a boost, maybe hit Ryan in the side so it's a little harder to get pinned, but some sort of boop and then back to my team. Yeah, that's going to cost her a fair amount of health doing those things, but it does help delay the initial rush, the speed boost aspect that's happening, the mobility cooldowns that are happening to try to wipe out her backline quickly. Even just buying a few more seconds of time with that booster to break the actual dive that's coming through, or in the mirror, break the actual dive that's coming through. Anything to push that back and go, no, I'm going to just slow this down a little bit with a U-turn boop is absolutely phenomenal, especially against those 6-man compositions or those Winston Anna compositions to go, hey, we need to slow down their win so that our flankers are able to win the game. If we can keep our Zen alive a little bit longer, that's going to be a big deal. She's looking to slow down the engagement, both with the boop and, of course, with the defense matrix. you're generally, as D.Va, going to end up diving from a very similar direction to your core. So you can, like we said, plug a lane a little bit shallowly, but most of the time you're going to end up, when the actual dive happens, going in from the same direction as your core. So maybe we have Tracer and Ball coming in from the top, Sombra coming in from the bottom, and these guys sort of walking straight at the opponents. That is mostly what you're going to do. You're not going to have given them some giant poke phase because you don't really have meaningful poke as D.Va, though you may have done some DM flashing to allow your Zen to do a little poke. You may have thrown some micro missiles in, that sort of thing, depending on the matchup. But you're mostly going to go, hey, my dive direction mostly has to be where my team was. If I was shallowly playing another lane, I can potentially dive from there. But I am going, if we're calling a hard commit where everyone dives, not just a Tracer and Ball or trying to get a quick pick or trying to maybe force a lamp, something like that, trying to maybe force a Wraith, something along those lines. If this is a more serious, no, we're going, you are going to go in as D.Va, and it's perfectly okay that you are not getting your team a fourth or a fifth angle and are mostly going from the same direction as your team there. But the real question then is going to become, when can you dive? Like I just said, hey, you can dive when your whole team dives, and that is absolutely true. If your whole team is diving, you can dive, but your whole team diving means your Zen and Brig are walking in. And they're not going to do that every single time. There's going to be some of these softer dives we talked about. Maybe they're assassination attempts. Maybe they're trying to force some cooldowns. Maybe they're just going, hey, let's trade a couple blinks and Tether for some cooldowns out of the opponents. And then Tether is on a short cooldown. Couple blinks, not that expensive to get back. We can trade those in our favor. And then we can get out and then go back in a few seconds later and that sort of thing. So can D.Va have gone in on that first time? Well, there's a couple things that control that. And those things that you're really going to want to think of for D.Va on can I go in or not are going to be really the following things. So first off, do you know where two of their flankers are? And I am including main tanks in flankers here if it's appropriate. So Winston and Ball would be flankers in this situation. If you know where the opponent's Winston and Reaper is, you can probably go in as D.Va to help your Ball out with a soft dive, to do that sort of thing. If you know where the opponent's Wrecking Ball and Tracer is, you can probably go in if they're in a place where they can't get on your backline. If they've been appropriately forced back, are exhausted on cooldowns, have been forced to the other side of the map, you can probably go in even for some of those softer dives, or even if your backline doesn't go in. If their Tracer doesn't have Pulse Bomb, you're also in a situation where it's more likely that you can't go in. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can go in, but it's more likely that you can go in. So, okay, if two flankers are controlled, that's good. If Pulse Bomb is not available, that's a sign that potentially you can go in there. Another thing that you're going to be looking at is support ult status. If you're in a situation where your Brig has Rally, for example, it's more likely that you can go in. Honestly, if you're in a situation where your Brig has Rally, they should be going in too. And that gets us to our, hey, is everyone going in? And if everyone is going in, you can always go in. But even if your supports are a little slow to get it, if your supports have a support ult, you can generally go in harder, because even if they do get picked on by a Tracer, picked on by a Winston, picked on by a Sombra, a Reaper, whatever the case may be there, they should be able to go, hey, it's okay. Our D.Va was trying to get something. She was likely to get something. Help us get that Zen pick. Help us get that Bat pick, whatever. And if we get that, and then as a result of her leaving and trying to go get that, we end up having to rally in the backline to save ourselves, that's not actually the worst thing in the world, because it's a, hey, there's the, we think we can go get this pick with our D.Va joining the dive. We don't think we're going to lose a fight against their backlines. Oh, we're losing, we're going to pop Rally. Oh, we're losing, we're going to pop Transcendence. You should get the pick most of the time. You should have to pop that Rally or Transcendence less of the time. That said, again, most of the time, if you have a support ult like that, you're more likely to be going in the first place. The exception to that would be, hey, we have a support ult, they have both support ults, they don't have Pulse Bomb. Okay, I'm potentially going to go in as D.Va to try to help force one of those support ults, that sort of thing, or force it earlier, and then we might walk in with our support ult. And if, again, someone shows up and we end up having to have forced our own support ult, not the worst thing in the world. So those are sort of the things that you're looking at to think about. Am I going to go in as D.Va? or do I need to wait? Is this a soft dive that I can join or not join? Oh, they don't have pulse bomb. We do have a support ult. I can probably join it. Oh, their Tracer is on the other side of their map, and their Winston already dropped their personal bubble on his team, so he can't really engage on my backline. Great, I can probably go in, even if this isn't a real dive. Oh, this is a real dive where my Brig and Zen are, or where my Brig and Zen are walking in. I can probably go ahead and dive in and go pretty hard there. I do also want to point out that you have to play a very low resource diva for this comp. When you're playing this low resource diva, what does that mean? It means you're actually not going to get to go for a ton of plays. You're not going to get to go for a ton of, hey, let me go try to go over here and, duel this Tracer super far away from my team, or let me jump on this Zen that I think is out of position, whatever, unless this is a full committal. You do not expect to get to go, hey, let me throw my micro missiles at the other team. Let me trade out a bunch of mech health in this comp. I'm going to sit here, DM to scout, to draw some attention to me while my teammates shoot at them. You don't really want to actually spend the health that it takes to draw that much attention to you as D.Va, because the only healing that you are really expecting to get is, hey, the inspires that happen when our actual dive happens, or the inspires that happen when someone from the other team shows up on my backline and I'm fighting them, and of course Brig is fighting them too. That is the healing that you really expect to get as D.Va. You are wrong if it takes repair packs to keep you up in the poke phase. You are wrong if you're having to move Harmony Orb to you in the poke phase, that sort of thing. You do not want that. You're delaying your team getting to go, and I guarantee you're not getting enough out of whatever you're doing that's drawing repair pack or Harmony Orbs to you in the actual poke phase here. So expect Inspire healing to be most of your healing until the fight is over, and then yes, you'll probably get Harmony Orb to heal you back up, as we talked about earlier, while the rest of your team is getting health packs and then setting up for the next fight there. So for the actual fight itself and for the poke phase, do not expect meaningful healing except for your Inspire. In general, when should you pick D.Va versus Sigma? D.Va's going to be good when you've got vertical maps going on, and she's really good when you're up against other dive comps. So that would be, you're expecting to go up against a Winston comp, be it a Winston Ana or Winston Moira variant, or you're expecting to go up against a ball comp. She's great in those situations. She's perfectly playable into bunker comps as well as into brawl comps, but what you're going to find is Sigma starts making sense as a swap when you are playing into, let me go ahead and get these swapped out here. Let's go get our Sigma. Great. And Sigma starts making a lot of sense when you are playing into brawls. And there's a reason for this. If you're playing into a real heavy brawl comp, you have to do this, hey, we're going to surround this composition. We're going to poke it from 3 different sides. One of those sides might be Ball Tracer. One of those sides might be Sigma Hanzo. One of those might be Brig Zen. We're going to do some level of, hey, let's surround you and poke you. Let's get our work done like that. Or maybe you split your ball and your Tracer. I don't really care. You're less worried, especially if they don't have their own Tracer, about getting caught, that sort of thing. But what you're looking to do is get your surround and your burn down. What D.Va really, really gave you against this sort of comp, and we saw this with the 6-man thing, is she could hit her boop to slow down the actual engage happening, which bought you more time to get your poke lead, which is something that you had against 6-man, and also something that you had against Monkey Ana comps. You have a Zen, they have an Ana, you have a Ball, they have a Winston. Your poke's actually quite a bit better. But what you're looking at here, it can be different, obviously, if they have an Echo, but you still generally want to break it up, not let their dive come in. D.Va's not going to be so good at stopping a brawl comp from running over her backline. She's not going to be able to as meaningfully delay that. There's the pin threat that can get her, that like if you try to boop Orion out of the way and he catches you with a pin, that's not great. They've got speed boost going on. Her boost just doesn't slow them down as much and doesn't get her as much time for her team's win condition, which is softening up the other team enough that they're now weak enough for a dive to be successful. Sigma slows them down even less than D.Va does in terms of them coming in, but Sigma softens them up quite a bit faster with his much stronger poke phase. So that's why we start leaning into the Sigma, even though that might seem a little weird when we're playing against Brawl. Perfectly fine, you can absolutely win with the D.Va, but Sigma makes sense as a swap if there's less verticality and you're playing into or expect to be playing into Brawl there, as he's going to lean into that, hey, we're softening them up win condition. The other thing you want to think about with Sigma is Sigma doesn't really make sense to be played unless you also have some other poke aspect that you've worked in there. That could be a Hanzo, that could be an Ashe, that could be a Pharah, that could be an Echo. A Hanzo or an Ashe might use, that could even be a Cassidy, they might use Sigma's barrier and go with Sigma and, hey, now we have 3 groups of 2. But it's also perfectly fine to be in a situation where, hey, we have an Echo instead of an Ashe, just as a quick example, and our Echo is poking from somewhere else, whatever. Our Sigma's over with our Zen. Maybe we have a Brig with our Zen. Maybe we have a Mercy with our Echo. Don't really care. But the point is, you need enough poke to make Sigma's poke threat sort of matter. Sigma, if you can't slow down the engagement from having the D.Va and you don't have enough total poke to really be speeding up your softening, doesn't work terribly well. So Sigma, fine pick, can win into other comps too, is actually probably pretty similar. I find a lot of teams will prefer to play the Sigma variant into the bunkers as well. A bunker would be like an Orisa D.Va or an Orisa Sigma comp, that sort of thing. I find teams will sometimes prefer to play into these as well, and that is perfectly fine to use this comp into these. What you're generally going to recognize when you're using a Sigma into a bunker comp, I don't really consider it advantageous or disadvantageous. You might go, hey, wait, more divers should be better against a bunker comp, and I would say it is if the bunkers are playing correctly and splitting up and going, hey, we have one bunker in one place that maybe has D.Va Ashe and another bunker somewhere else that is maybe 4 people, Orisa, Hanzo, Bap, Brig, for example, and it would be nice to have the D.Va to help corral the smaller bunker back into the larger bunker. That can be helpful. But Sigma is going to have the advantage on the flip side of having an easier time of walking his backline in. When you're fighting against these bunker comps, you are going to be in a situation where it is very uncomfortable for your backline to walk on the bunker. Even if this bunker is on the ground, not the high ground, it is very uncomfortable for your bunker to walk, or for your backline to walk on this bunker the way they need to when the dive is happening. And they do have to, because you do need your Brig in there getting value. Sigma is a little more helpful than D.Va at escorting your people in his ability to cycle between his barrier, his kinetic grasp, his shift, his hands effectively. There's a few more tools, more than just what you get out of DM, to make it a little safer for your team to walk in there. It can feel a little bit better for the backline, because while D.Va of course has boosters to go in, that doesn't help her team get in quite as much against a lot of poke coming at them. Sigma also, because of the greater poke, is going to put a little better pressure on the opponents to make it a little bit easier for your DPS to rotate into the initial positioning that they want there. One thing I will mention is it's very tempting to 4-stack in some of these situations, especially when you have Sigma. Don't do it. You do not get to 4-stack with these groups here. You will not be able to hit things from enough directions if you do it. And then it really is going to be pretty similar to D.Va here in terms of how this all works. You're remembering you're not expecting to have a lot of resources poured into you. You'll get some Inspire healing when you go in there. You're juggling between your barrier health, your shield health, your kinetic grasp, your shift. You are not looking to tax a lot of Harmony Orb and such there. But that's really going to do it. We've walked through how to play each of the tanks in this composition, sort of what's important for them to think about, what are the keys to going in there and getting the win. If you guys have questions, you can certainly leave them in the comments below. If you're enjoying the content, please do drop a like, consider subscribing if you have not yet done so, and let me know if you want to see more guides like this, where I go over what specific roles do. In this case, it was tanks. Next time it could be support, or next time it could be DPS and Brawl, or something along those lines. But let me know in the comments. Again, if you enjoyed, please do drop a like, consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Temporal.